Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in. Welcome again to my channel. My name is Bob and I'll be your host, for better or worse. How do I look?
You look great.
I look good tonight? Okay, what are we talking about tonight? Oh, history. I'm going to talk about history tonight.
Wow, you love history.
I do love history. Unfortunately, they don't teach history anymore. They teach hysteria. They teach histrionics. But I will teach history tonight. Like all sports, bodybuilding has a fantastic history. It did not begin with Arnold Schwarzenegger. In fact, in my opinion, the so-called golden age of bodybuilding, strength training, basically ended with his retirement. And there were a few of the champion bodybuilders from his era that were still competing into the early 80s. But by 1990, for me, the whole competitive aspect of bodybuilding pretty much lost my interest. It wasn't until the pandemic hit and I started binge watching a lot of these exercise and bodybuilding videos so that I could kind of catch up with a lot of what I had missed. And from what I've seen lately, I'm glad I missed it. It's not what I call bodybuilding anymore. It's muscles from a bottle. It's all one big science experiment, nothing like it used to be. But be that as it may, it had to have a beginning. Bodybuilding has its own Hall of Fame, just like baseball, football, hockey. They have their Hall of Fame institutions. Now, for me, the whole concept of what we call modern day bodybuilding has its origins in this little beauty called kettlebell. The kettlebell was first invented in Russia, but it was popularized and spread mainly by, its use spread mainly by the old-time German strongmen, such as Gerner, John Marks, Steinbach, people like that. My first encounter with the kettlebell, as a matter of fact, came when I visited Sig Klein's gym on Broadway, in the Broadway district in Manhattan. Sig Klein was a Prussian strongman, bodybuilder, gymnast who came to America around 1905, and he opened up Klein's gym in New York in 1925, I believe. And that gym existed for about 50 years. So when we first started going out, you asked me to go down to Broadway to pick up tickets for a show. And I never saw a Broadway show until I met you.
Wow.
But anyway, while I was down there, I decided to go visit the Sig Klein gym, which I had read about. I'd seen pictures of him, but I had never seen the gym. So while I was down there one day, I decided, while I was picking up tickets for the show, I'd go visit Sig. And when you go into his gym, it's like, it looks like a shrine that you would see in the Bavarian Alps or someplace. But the place had carpeting, kettlebells. Down one wall, he had those globe-ended dumbbells and the globe barbells, gymnastic equipment. The place was basically set up for people who worked in the theater district. It wasn't really a bodybuilder's gym. But we talked, he asked me what I do and that kind of thing. What I did notice, however, were a bunch of photographs. Oh, before I get to that, he was a big collector of beer steins. So all around the wall of the gym, all around the walls were beer steins. He must have had over 100 of them. Beautiful. So he was kind of had that idiosyncrasy with that. But he had a lot of photos on the wall of the old-time strongmen. And in particular, he had several photos of this guy right here. He occupies a special place on the wall. When you go into like some martial arts studios, the dojos, they usually have a photograph of the master of that art, along with some of his pupils and disciples that spread the art. In fact, there's a Kung Fu studio near where I live. You go in there and he's got a whole bunch of photos of the master of his art, along with a whole bunch of his disciples. Anyway, this man's name was Friedrich Müller. Friedrich Müller was born in Prussia in 1867. His father was in the jewelry business, and his father had to go to Italy on business, and when young Friedrich was 12 years old, he decided to take him with him on that business trip. While they were there, they visited all of the museums, art galleries. They went to Florence, they saw the sculptures, and the one thing young Friedrich noticed was that the male images that were depicted in these paintings and sculptures and statues were very muscular. And his reasoning was, at 12 years old, because he had never seen a man, any men built like that. And he figured, well, there's no way you could look like that if you were not meant to look like that. So in his mind, that was his idea of what a man should look like. So when they got home, he decided to do some investigating and some researching, and he saw pictures of those old Greek statues and Roman statues, and he just became immersed in it, and he became obsessed with getting his body to look like that. Now, fortunately for him, he had the metabolism, he had the genetics, and he started with gymnastics, wrestling, acrobatics, and by the time he was 18, he was already a specimen, shall we say. And he joined the circus as an acrobat. When the circus got to Brussels, they went bankrupt, and young Friedrich was out of work. Now, here's a great example of being in the right place at the right time, being born under the right sign or under the right star. Who makes his appearance in Brussels? None other than Professor Attila. The famous Professor Attila was another German strongman out of Munich who was on tour throughout Europe, and his tour ended in Brussels. So he meets up with young Friedrich. He sees some great potential in young Friedrich and decides, he had been working on putting a two-man act together anyway. He said, oh, this guy looks to be the perfect partner for me. And he also put him on a regimen of barbells and dumbbells, which was Professor Attila's forte. So after a little while, young Friedrich filled out and became something to see. And they decided he needed to change his name to something a little bit more of a strongman sounding name. So what he did was he changed his first name to Eugen, E-U-G-E-N. You'll see it sometimes or hear it sometimes pronounced as Eugene. It's Eugen. In German, EU is pronounced Oi, and Eugen was a popular boy's name or man's name back in that time. So that was his first name. For his last name was a contraction of his mother's maiden name, so he took the name Eugen Sandow. You may have heard the name Sandow every year at the very prestigious Mr. Olympia contest, which is a contest that Arnold Schwarzenegger won 7 times. They give out what's called the Sandow Trophy. It's about a 2-foot statuette of Sandow, weighs about 25 pounds, and they give that out to the winner of the Mr. Olympia contest every year, along with a very substantial cash prize. Now, this particular, when the professor and Sandow get to London, they go their separate ways. They break up the act, and Sandow goes his own way. And what he actually becomes famous for is his physique. Now, he was a very strong man. For example, he had a 300-pound barbell, one of those globe-ended barbells that strong men used to use in their shows. And he would pick it up, press it, put it back down, the globes would open up, and two girls would pop out. He would take a 50-pound dumbbell in each hand, and he would do a backward somersault. He would offer a cash prize to anybody in the audience that could duplicate that. He would pull horses, so he did stuff like that. But at the end of that, the curtains would close, and about 10 minutes later, there was Sandow in what would be called an oversized telephone booth, a glass case with a pedestal. He's got white powder on him, and he takes, what he did was he took that powder, and he had an 8-pack, he didn't have a 6-pack, and he would rub that powder into the crevices where his definition would show up underneath and around the pectorals, in the abdominals, in the deltoid tricep area. So he would actually look like a statue, and he would start to move and pose. So he looked like this statue come to life. He looked like it was carved out of rock. And the audience would just sit there slack-jawed. They had never seen anything like this. The curtain would close, and it was like 9 times out of 10, the audience would just sit there until one guy would start clapping. You know how that works. One guy starts, then another guy, and another person, and then, of course, the standing ovation. So he reached fame and fortune basically with his body. So he was a fantastic showman. He was a fantastic personality. He was a raconteur, an entrepreneur. He was a bon vivant. The guy was a womanizer. But this photograph this was taken in New York right before. This was at the end of his American tour in 1897, but right before he went home to London, where he made his home. And when he got back, he opened the very first, what would be called a bodybuilding studio. It was strictly a health club or a health center, a fitness center that was dedicated strictly for muscle building. He was also all the way back then in 1897. He was a big advocate for women working out with weights. I have a copy of his book, Strength and How to Obtain It, by Eugen Sandow. It's available on eBay or Amazon. This was published first in 1897. There's a chapter, a 5-page chapter in here on physical culture for women. And he makes a very strong case that women should be exercising with light dumbbells because it makes them more beautiful. I also, he also felt that women needed to be strong, especially in those days. It was a hard life in general, and he felt that they would better cope with life if they had more strength. And anyway, I also have a copy of his system called Sandow's System. It's first published in 1894. There's a lot of information in here. His system is laid out in a series of photographs where he demonstrates all of the exercises. A lot of information on nutrition and on exercise. So I highly recommend both books. There's nothing new under the sun. What we do in 2023, they did back in 1923 and back even before his time. A barbell curl is a barbell curl. So that's about it. Just wanted to give you a brief history of the background of this great sport. And see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Stay strong, get stronger, and stay safe.